Before we begin, take a moment to get comfortable. Let your arms go heavy, your breath slow. And as you listen, feel free to leave a comment sharing what time it is, where you are, and what city or village you're listening from. It's love to know. And if you'd like more quiet stories like this one, don't forget to subscribe so they gently appear when you need them most. Now, let's begin. The surface disappears faster than you expect. A thin membrane of wind and wave that only moments ago held everything you knew: sky, sun, voices. Air now vanishes above your head in a blur of light. A last shimmer, then nothing. You descend, slowly, quietly, through the upper layer of the sea, where blue still lingers. The light here is soft and scattered. It dances across your skin, shivering like liquid glass. You are still close enough to remember the world above, but it is beginning to fade. This is the epipelagic zone, the sunlight zone. It stretches down to about 200 meters. Here, life still pulses with light. Schools of fish flash like coins in a fountain. Plankton bloom in radiant swirls, drifting on gentle currents. Jellyfish pulse like distant lanterns. The pressure is growing, but it is still bearable. For now, oxygen is plentiful here. Photosynthesis still whispers beneath the waves, but your journey is not meant for the light. You go deeper as your body sinks through the water column. The pressure begins to press, not sharply, not violently, just ... insistently, like a quiet hand around your ribs, tightening with each meter. Your heartbeat slows in response. The air in your lungs becomes heavier. The world narrows. Below you, the blue begins to turn indigo, lead, then black. This is the beginning of the twilight zone, the mesopelagic. Between 200 and 1,000 meters is the realm of shadows. Here, sunlight cannot reach with strength. Shapes are uncertain. Colors begin to vanish. Red is the first to go. Then orange, then yellow. All warmth is filtered away, leaving only muted blues and grays. The temperature drops sharply. The water grows colder with each breath. But life is here too, not like the surface, not in schools or herds or flocks. Here, life is solitary, slow, patient. A lanternfish glides past, its body dotted with tiny bioluminescent orbs. It carries its own constellation, like a map no one else can read. A squid hovers, transparent as glass, its organs faintly visible beneath gelatinous folds. It watches you with alien precision, then vanishes in a ripple of movement. These creatures do not see with eyes alone. They sense vibration, pressure, movement. They survive by intuition and silence. You descend further. At 1,000 meters, the light ends entirely. This is the bathypelagic zone, the midnight zone. Okay? The pressure is crushing. 1,100 tons of weight per square meter, equivalent to being buried beneath a mountain. And yet, life endures. There is no day or night here, only an eternal dusk. The creatures of this zone carry light inside them, not for beauty, for survival. Some dangle glowing lures to attract prey. Others use flashes of light to confuse predators. A few shimmer with blue-green pulses to find mates in the dark. But all of them know this truth: in the deep, light is danger. Anything that glows is visible. Anything visible is vulnerable. So the best strategy is to disappear. Many deep-sea animals are dark red or pitch black. Some have skin that absorbs 99.9% of light. Others flatten their bodies to cast no shadow. There are fish with eyes so sensitive they can see the faintest flicker of bioluminescence from hundreds of meters away. To survive here is to master invisibility. But invisibility alone is not enough. Food is scarce. There is no plant life in the midnight zone. No photosynthesis. The only energy comes from above dead things that fall through the water column. Marine snow, a constant, silent rain of particles, dead plankton, fecal matter, scales, dust. It drifts downward in slow spirals, feeding what waits below, and what waits is patient. Some creatures wait weeks between meals. The gulper eel, with its massive jaw and glowing lure, floats quietly in the dark. When prey comes near, it opens its mouth wide enough to swallow creatures larger than itself. The giant amphipod scavenges the seafloor with armored legs, feeding on anything that lands near. The vampire squid, despite its name, is a scavenger, too. It drifts with minimal motion, conserving energy, flaring its bioluminescent arms only when threatened. Nothing is wasted in the deep dot. Every calorie matters. Every flicker of motion must be justified. You feel it, now the quiet mathematics of survival. Each beat of your heart must serve a purpose. Each breath must be slow and deliberate. Your muscles conserve warmth. Your eyes adjust to nothingness, and still, you go deeper. Below 4,000 meters, the ocean flattens out. This is the abyssal plain of vast, dark desert, the abyssal pelagic zone. It is a world without horizon, no up, no down, no left or right, just blackness. And yet, there is life here. 2 sea cucumbers inch slowly across the mud, absorbing nutrients from the dust. Brittle stars coil and uncoil. Deep sea worms build chimney-like structures near hydrothermal vents. Blind crabs scuttle along the ocean floor. Here, in total darkness, hot water, rich in minerals, seeps from fissures in the Earth's crust. These hydrothermal vents become oases. Microbes feed on the chemicals. Small creatures feed on the microbes. Larger ones come after that. An entire ecosystem built not on sunlight, but on geosynthesis. This is survival without the sun. This is what it means to adapt. And you flow quietly in the silence. No voice, no signal, just the slow pulse of water and the knowledge that this world is older than land, older than light, older than sound. The deep sea is not empty. It is full, but it is full of silence, of pressure, of creatures who have learned the secret of stillness. You listen to the sound of nothing, to the weight of everything. The ocean does not welcome or reject you. It simply continues. You are one more thing falling through its breath, and below you, the trench still waits. The plain beneath you stretches for hundreds of miles, an endless seafloor of mud and broken shells, scattered bones, the slow sediment of millennia. Nothing moves quickly here. Even time feels different. But ahead of you, there is a break, a scar in the earth. It begins without warning. A sheer drop, crack in the crust, darker than the darkness that surrounds it. This is the beginning of the Hades Zone, named after Hades, god of the underworld. It exists only in the world's deepest trenches, and you are about to enter one. The descent begins again, not through open water, but into a fissure. The trench walls rise around you, massive, crumbling, covered in silt and shadows. The pressure now is unimaginable, over 1,000 times what you felt at the surface. 8 tons pressing down on every square inch of your body, and still, no collapse, because water doesn't compress, and because life somehow adapts here. At depths greater than Mount Everest is tall, life forms have evolved to survive in ways few can understand. Terra cells contain special molecules, piezolites, that prevent pressure from destroying their proteins. Their membranes are soft, flexible. Their metabolism is slow, almost dreamlike. They live, not in defiance of pressure, but in harmony with it. You drift past a deep-sea amphipod. It's no bigger than your thumb, but armored like a tank. It darts between cracks in the trench wall, feeding on microscopic filaments. Then a flicker, far below, movement, and then stillness. You follow it, down, to the narrowest part of the trench, where visibility shrinks to a few feet. The walls seem to pulse. The water here is colder than ice, but never freezes. It's held liquid by pressure alone. You pass a strange formation, a polychaete worm garden, their feathery heads extended to catch nutrients drifting past in unseen currents. They do not move, terribly filter, patiently, endlessly here. Light is not just rare, it's forbidden. No bioluminescence, no glow, just blackness pressing in on all sides. But there is warmth. Hydrothermal vents, the trench floor in places. They do not erupt, they do not explode. They breathe, slowly, like sleeping giants. Superheated water seeps from deep within the earth, rich with iron, sulfur, and methane, and around them, life blooms. You are witnessing something ancient life, born not from sunlight, but from the planet's own heat. Chemosynthetic bacteria cling to rocks like soft moss. Tiny crustaceans graze on the bacterial mats. Long, translucent, fish-blind, pale, boneless swim slowly through the mineral-rich plumes, searching for scraps. Nothing is wasted. No sound, no color, no chaos, only function, only survival. You begin to notice how quiet it is, not just because there is no noise, but because there is no need for it. Animals here do not hunt by speed. They hunt by patience, by stillness, by proximity. They sense electromagnetic fields, minute vibrations, chemical trails left in the water, and they wait. A predator might go days, weeks, even months between meals, but it does not suffer. It is built for this rhythm. Its heart beats slowly. Its blood flows thick. Its muscles conserve every twitch. This is not survival by dominance. It is survival by surrender, by understanding exactly how little is needed. To keep going, you drift past the carcass of a whale. It has fallen from a world far above. A whale fall, scientists call it, an unexpected gift to the deep and around it. An ecosystem is formed. First came the scavengers hagfish, sleeper sharks, amphipods, tearing at flesh, gorging in the dark. Then came the specialists, worms that bore into bone, bacteria that digest oil trapped in marrow. A single whale fall can feed an entire trench for decades. Death here is not an ending. It is renewal. You float beside it. The bones stretch out like pale architecture, spires of ribs, columns of vertebrae, algae, and bacteria coated like moss on stone. It is beautiful in its stillness, even in decay. It gives life. You rise slightly, drawn by a shift in current. Currents here are not like those above. They move with the weight of continents, slow, inexorable, deep. In circulation, driven by temperature and salinity, pushes massive volumes of water through the trenches, like the breath of the sea itself. This is called the thermaline circulation, global conveyor belt. It moves warm water from the tropics to the poles and cold water from the poles to the deep. It shapes climates, feeds currents, cues, transfers oxygen and nutrients across the globe. And here, cool in the trench, you feel its edge, a slow, cold river inside the sea. You let it carry you sideways, deeper into the fissure. The trench narrows again. The walls squeeze inward, covered in delicate mineral crusts. Occasionally, a pale anemone clings to the stone, its tentacles waving like slow flames. And then, something strange, a glimmer, not light, but motion, regular, mechanical. You approach cautiously. It is a fragment of metal, old, rusted, cracked, part of a deep-sea lander, decades abandoned. Its lights are long dead, stator cores shattered, but its frame is intact, wrapped in corals, claimed by time. You remember then? This is not a place untouched by humans. We have sent probes, we have sent cameras, we have sent machines, but not ourselves. Very few humans have ever come this deep. The Mariana Trench, the Tonga Trench, the Kuril-Kamchatka, each a scar in the crust, older than humanity, deeper than thought. Even our deepest submarines come here, okay? Only briefly and never alone. You drift away from the wreck, back into the rhythm of the sea. You are beginning to understand that deep sea survival is not an act of violence. It is not a battle. It is not domination. It is endurance. It is quiet, soft, relentless. It is the art of waiting, of becoming invisible, of moving only when movement matters. Above you, thousands of meters of water. Below you, the crust of the earth. There is nowhere to go, and yet everything is alive. The sea cucumbers, the ghost octopuses, the bacterial mats, the scavengers, the predators, the patient waiters, and the passive drifters. They all endure, not because the deep is kind, but because they've learned how to listen to it. You feel the current shift again. It does not hurry. It simply turns and carries you with it. Deeper still. The current carries you sideways for what feels like hours. You do not swim. You do not resist. You drift. And the deep movement is expensive, okay? Every twitch, every pulse, every flex of muscle costs precious energy, okay? And there is no luxury of waste. The sea teaches this again and again. Only what is necessary survives. Above, there are no stars. Below, no ground you can feel. You are suspended in a world where light has no meaning, and yet you are not alone. The current thickens with life. You can barely see microscopic creatures drifting beside you, above you, beneath you. They are part of the deep pelagic web, feeding on particles even smaller than themselves. Their bodies are mostly transparent, nearly invisible, except for the occasional flash of a tiny stomach. A flicker of flagella, a gleam of bioluminescent bacteria riding along for protection. This is the base of an invisible food chain, one that feeds the giants of the trench. And then, suddenly, a shadow, massive, slow, a shape larger than any you've seen yet. It moves like a thought. No fins, no tail, just a long, undulating body sliding silently past. A giant siphonophore, one of the longest creatures on Earth. Not a single organism, but a colony of specialized beings, all working together. Some parts sting, others digest. Some glow, others drift. It is a living systema, floating community, and it is older than memory. You do not follow it. You cannot. It is gone before you finish your breath, but its presence reminds you that deep sea survival is not only about endurance, it is also about symbiosis. Nothing in the trench survives entirely alone. A shrimp may carry a parasite. A jelly may glow with borrowed light. A fish may host bacteria in its gut that digests what its stomach cannot. Even the smallest lives here are entangled with others. You remember, dimly, how life began in the ancient oceans, in places not unlike this hydrothermal vents, mineral plumes, the heat of the earth mixing with seawater. Something stirred, molecules joined, energy sparked, and life began not in sunlight, but in chemical shadow. You are surrounded by echoes of that beginning. The microbes drifting around you are not relics. They are winners, perfectly tuned to conditions that haven't changed in hundreds of millions of years. A little further now. The trench wall opens again, revealing a strange garden. At first, you think it is a rock face, but it moves. Tiny tendrils wave. Pulsing sacs contract and expand. Threads of mucus stretch between anchor points. This is not geology. This is a deep sea sponge reef. The sponges here are not like those near coral reefs. These are hexactinellids, or glass sponges. Their skeletons are made of silica glass, essentially woven into delicate, fractal patterns that seem too fragile for this world. And yet, they thrive in the darkness, filtering tiny particles from the current. Some are centuries old. Some may have started growing when the first humans lit their first fire. They do not move, they do not speak, but they endure. You float past a field of them, silent towers in the dark, and all around them others gather. Tiny shrimp, worms, amphipods sheltering in the sponge's folds, feeding on its waste, cleaning its surface in exchange. A miniature city of silent cooperation. You feel the current shift again, stronger now, colder. You are descending again, pulled deeper into the trench. There is no resistance, it's only surrender. It becomes harder to know which direction you are facing. Up and down lose meaning. The weight of the sea presses evenly on all sides. Even gravity feels less certain here. You are a thought, suspended in water and then motion, not yours. The water around you begins to pulse. It is not violent, not like a wave or a shock, more like a heartbeat, deep, low, rhythmic. Felt rather than heard. You follow it, and then you see it, a light, faint, flickering in the near distance, not bioluminescence, not from a creature. This is different. A pulse from the seafloor. It draws you in, carefully, quietly. You drift toward it, and there, the silten opening, a thin crack lined with soft blue glow. Steam rises slowly from it, curling like smoke underwater. This is a cold seep dot, not as dramatic as a hydrothermal vent, not as hot, not as explosive, but in many ways more mysterious. Here, methane and hydrogen sulfide leak from the Earth's crust, leak not from heat, but from deep pressure and tectonic compression. And around the seep, life again gathers, a bed of clams white, thick-shelled, lying in dense patches like a carpet. Beside them, two worms, tall and crimson-tipped, without mouths or stomachs. They survive through their symbiotic bacteria, which convert the toxic chemicals into nutrients. This place, like the sponge reef, is a colony, a city, one that lives not by sunlight, not by photosynthesis, but by chemosynthesis. The bacteria are the true farmers here. Everything else, forms, crabs, clams feeds on their work, and yet none of this is chaotic. There are no rushes, no bursts of movement, no waste, only cycles, only cooperation. A deep-sea octopus glides past slow, pale, with enormous eyes and delicate curling arms. It pauses over the seep for a moment, hovering in the stillness. Then it disappears into the dark, leaving behind a trail of motion that vanishes instantly. You stay 4 minutes, maybe hours. There is no way to tell. And then the current shifts again. It begins to pull you away. Not suddenly, not forcefully, but with certainty. The trench continues. The current is colder now, thicker. It smells of iron and salt. You are approaching something ancient, not in time, but in memory. The rocks here are rougher, sharper, coated in crusts of manganese and nickel. The trench floor bears scars, ridges, cracks, whole signs of tectonic violence long past. You realize you are floating through the wound of the earth, a place where continents once met, a pore where plates grind silently against each other, where magma once spilled into the sea and solidified under crushing pressure. The deep sea remembers. It does not speak, but it remembers. You pass over a small cliff, below a chasm deeper still, and something moves there, not a creature, a shadow, long, slow, unblinking, and then it is gone. The sea does not explain, it simply continues, and you smaller now, required to continue with it. The current narrows, darkens, it becomes less like a river, and more like a tunnel, and you enter. You enter. The entrance to the tunnel is not a gate. There are no doors here, no walls, no signs. It is simply where the current leads you through a narrowing in the rock into a space smaller, darker, quieter than anything before it. You do not resist. There is no resistance in the deep dot, only drift. Only adaptation, the water around you is colder than ever. It's not freezing because it cannot freeze here. The immense pressure keeps it liquid, even as the temperature approaches zero, but it no longer feels like water. It feels ancient, heavy, as though it remembers things you do not. The tunnel narrows. The walls of the trench draw close. You could almost reach out and touch them, though you do not try. They are jagged, formed not by erosion, but by tectonic fracture. It's edges of broken earth, held still by the weight of the ocean. Nothing grows here. There is no light, no vent, no seep, only silence. And yet, you sense movement, not from ahead, from within the walls. At first, it is faint, a vibration more than a sound. A tremble you feel in your bones. The deep is shifting, not quickly, not dangerously, just adjusting, because nothing in the deep stays still forever. Even the earth moves here. Tectonic plates grind together, slow as thought. Some shift a centimeter a year, others sleep for centuries, then shift in an hour. In that hour, mountains are formed. Tinas deepen, fault lines crack wider. The sea does not rage when this happens. It absorbs, it wraps around the change, and continues. You pass over one such fault line. Now, it is not wide, only a few meters across, but the rock on either side doesn't match. One side is older, smoother, covered in mineral crust. The other is jagged, fresh, recently exposed. You're witnessing the slow violence of time. Here, in this tunnel, the earth is not passive. It is unfinished, still forming, still becoming. You drift lower. The pressure now is more than 1,200 atmospheres. There is no equivalent on land. No way to compare it to anything human. If a human body were exposed without protection, it would be crushed in an instant, not by force, but by presence. The sheer weight of water, not angry, not malicious, simply overwhelming. But pressure alone does not define this place. There is another force here, stillness. It wraps around you, dense as gravity. Nothing moves unnecessarily. A small snail drifts past, barely visible. Its shell is thinner than paper. Its body soft, its motion almost imperceptible. It will live for decades, not because it avoids danger, but because it never hurries. Hurry is a surface behavior. Here, there is only patience. You pass through a narrow arch in the rock formed by slow collapse, or maybe long erosion. It does not matter. The opening leads to a wider chamber, and suddenly, the silence ends. Softly, gradually. It is not noise, exactly. It is rhythm, a slow, pulsing echo, like breath. You move toward it and find yourself in a chamber, larger than a cathedral. The ceiling is lost in the dark. The floor is uneven, lined with rocks, silt, sediment, bones, and in the center, a vent. Not a hydrothermal one, not a seep dot, something else. A brine pool, a lake within the ocean. Its surface is perfectly flat, still, glossy like oil, a tensor 5 times saltier than seawater, heavier, unmixed. It lies at the bottom of the chamber like a mirror, and around it, life gathers, strange life, tube worms, crabs, mussels, but also other things. Flatworms with bioluminescent edges, tiny fish with no eyes, their skin coated in mucus that filters toxins, microbes that feed on methane with such efficiency that they produce sulfur clouds. This is one of the ocean's strangest paradoxes. The most toxic places are often the most alive, because where others cannot go, competition vanishes, and in that emptiness, life invents new rules. You watch a shrimp swim into the pool. It does not float. It sinks, immediately disappears to the dense brine like a coin into tar. Gone above the pool, the water ripples faintly, and you feel it again, that pulse, the ocean breathing, not with lungs, with cycles. The brine pool is connected to deeper currents. It exchanges gases with the water above. It burps, it stirs, it cools, it warms, it pulses, and everything around it adjusts. The fish drift higher, the worms close their plumes, bacteria slow their metabolism. Then, once the rhythm comes, they resume. There is no panic, only reaction. You stay at the edge of the pool for a long time, watching, learning. No sound reaches this far, no light, no memory, but there is wisdom here, a deep, slow understanding that the surface will never know. You begin to rise, not by choice. The current that brought you here begins to reverse. The tunnel that led down now leads up. You do not resist. You follow. The chamber narrows behind you. The brine pool fades. The echo of the pulse becomes faint, and you rise through mineral arches, past slow drifting creatures, around stalactites of iron and manganese. The pressure lessens out slightly. You notice it in your chest, in your ears. Not pain, just change. You are leaving the deepest part of the trench, but you are not returning to the surface. Not yet. The current carries you sideways. Through another channel, you emerge into open water against still dark, still cold, but wider. And here, finally, you see movement, not frantic, but fast. You've entered a hunting ground. Creatures here are different, larger, more active. A snipe eel swims past, its jaw long and delicate like a needle. A deep-sea anglerfish hovers in the shadows, its glowing lure trembling in the dark. A giant squid, pale, majestic, covered in scars, floats by with arms folded. Watching, they do not fight, they choose. Every action here is calculated, every meal a decision. And you realize survival here is not about victory. It is about efficiency. Do not move unless it gains you something. Do not glow unless you must. Do not fight unless you've already won. You drift slowly past a school of hatchetfish, their sides metallic, their eyes enormous. They do not flee from you. They do not need to. They are built to vanish. Their sides reflect only the darkness. Their undersides glow faintly, mimicking the light from above, canceling their shadow. They are invisible from below, invisible from above, perfectly designed for a world of watchers. And you are learning to watch too. You let the current carry you, not with fear, but with curiosity. The trench still stretches ahead, but you are no longer lost. You are part of the rhythm now, part of the deep. The rhythm of the water has changed again. It is subtle, like the change in air pressure before a storm. Not violent, not loud, just expectant. Something is near, not a single thing, but a presence, a domain, a region where the rules of the deep feel different. Heavier, somehow. You're entering a place where giants still roam, not mythical beasts or imagined horrors. Real creatures, fast, old, slow-moving, perfectly adapted to this pressure, this silence, this darkness. The water here feels denser. You begin to drift more slowly, not from resistance, but as though the ocean itself is asking you to pause, to tread carefully, to observe, and so you do. The first shadow appears on your left, enormous, moving with the slow, deliberate grace of something that knows it is the largest thing in the room, a sperm whale. It should not be here, not at this depth, and yet it is, descending far deeper than most mammals can survive. These whales plunge into the abyss for a single reason: to hunt their prey. Giant squid. The whale passes without acknowledging you. It is not concerned by your presence. It has no enemies here, only silence and the possibility of a meal. Its body is marked by scars, round sucker marks from past battles, pale against its gray skin. Some are small, others span meters. You imagine the encounter, not fast, not cinematic, just two beings in the dark, finding each other by sound, by scent, by the echo of motion. The whale moves on. The trench grows deeper again. You do not descend rapidly now. Instead, the current lets you coast. There is no rush in this part of the sea. The pace of life has settled into glacial rhythms. In the distance, another form. This one does not move. It lies on the ocean floor like a ridge. At first, you think it is rock. Then you see the slow undulation of gills, the occasional flick of a long tail, a deep sea ray, wider than a car, its body covered in silt, blending into the seafloor like a shadow too lazy to lift. It feeds here, on the small creatures buried in the mud, on worms, crustaceans, microbial mats. Its body is heavy, but its motion, when it chooses to move, is fluid, unrushed, as if it has nothing to prove. You drift past it, does not react. Further on, another structure, not a creature, a skeleton, huge, curved, still half buried in sediment. The vertebrae form an arc like the ribs of a shipwreck. But this was no ship. It is the remains of a whale, long dead, perhaps a century, perhaps more, in all around it life, worms, shrimp, bacteria, pale fish weaving in and out of the bones. This is what scientists call a whale fall. When a whale dies and sinks to the seafloor, it becomes an ecosystem. In the first stage, scavengers strip the flesh. In the second, smaller creatures pick at the remaining soft tissue. And in the final stage, bacteria colonize the bones themselves, breaking down lipids trapped in the marrow. A single whale can feed the deep for decades. This one, even now, is not truly dead. It is part of the cycle, part of the survival. You drift slowly around it, watching how the trench reclaims what falls into it. Nothing is wasted. Nothing is hurried. Death here is not a tragedy. It is a function. And even in death, life grows. Above you now, it's movement, a spiral. Tiny white creatures dancing in slow orbits, like dust motes in a sunbeam, except there is no sunbeam here. These are sea angels, small, winged mollusks. Their name is misleading. They are predators, graceful but lethal to their prey. You watch one flutter toward a smaller cousin, wrap translucent arms around it, and consume it whole. There is no malice, no cruelty, only hunger, only survival. The deeper you go, the more it becomes clear. The deep sea is not a place of horror. It is a place of balance. Brutal, yes, but honest. Everything here knows its role. The bacteria recycled the waste. The shrimp cleaned the seafloor. The scavengers wait. The predators stalk slowly, conserving energy until the moment is right. There is no excess, no panic, just the rhythm of pressure, cold and breathless patience. You move again. The trench narrows, once more, and then shock. A light, not bioluminescence, not soft, not drifting. A harsh, artificial beam, yellowish white, flickering, cutting through the dark like a blade. You freeze. It comes from below, and as you drift downward, cautiously, the source becomes clear. A remotely operated vehicle ROV, an unmanned submersible, sent from the surface, covered in sensors, lights, cameras, mechanical arms. You are not alone. The ROV hovers above the trench floor, scanning, sampling, recording. Its lights disturb the stillness. Its hum reverberates faintly. Nearby, the creatures scatter. They are not afraid, gear confused. This kind of light does not belong here. It reveals too much. It cuts through the dark instead of becoming part of it. And yet, Darov lingers. It plucks a sample from the seafloor. It captures an image. It releases a small probe. Then it rises, slowly, disappearing back into the silence from which it came. And you are left again in darkness. You do not resent its presence, but you feel the difference between observation and understanding. The machine sees, but it does not learn. It cannot feel the pressure. It cannot listen to the silence. It cannot be part of the rhythm, only witness it. You continue on. There is more trench ahead. The pressure is steady now, the cold, constant. You have reached a kind of equilibrium, and in that stillness, you find something strange. A field of manganese nodules, black, round stones scattered across the seafloor. They look like discarded cannonballs, but they are natural. It's formed over millions of years, layer by layer, around a tiny core. Their existence is still not fully understood, but they matter to machines. They are valuable, full of rare metals. To the deep, they are homes. Crabs hide in their shadows. Worms burrow between them. Bacteria colonize their surfaces. Even the stillest object becomes a part of life down here. You pause, and for the first time, you feel it, not just the pressure, or the cold, or the silence, but the depth itself. It is not a measurement, it is a presence. The deep is not a place you visit, it is a place that changes you. You do not return the same, and, as the current stirs again, guiding you gently forward, you understand survival. Here is not just about biology, it is about acceptance. Let go of light, let go of time, let go of surface logic. Breathe in the pressure, float in the silence, and become something that understands the world by stillness. You drift, not forward, not upward, just inward, inward. There are no voices in the deep dot, no speech, no echoes, it's no language in the way we understand it. But still, the deep sea communicates, not with words, not even with sound. It speaks in pressure. Pressure is constant here, denser than steel, older than light, more precise than any tool made by hands. Tore, but it is not always the same. Shifts, swells, dips, reacts, and the creatures here. They listen, they respond, not with panic or alarm, but with adjustment. A soft-bodied jelly, drifting near the seafloor, senses the pressure change before any predator arrives. It tenses slightly. Its body folds inward. Not to hide, just to prepare. Nearby, a brittle star retreats beneath the sand, not because it sees a shadow, but because the weight of the water around it has changed the ripple of something larger, moving nearby. This is how life survives here. It doesn't wait for danger to arrive. It feels it coming. And in that moment, you realize something deep and strange. You've started to understand it too. You feel the subtle sway of the trench walls before they shift. You anticipate the passing of a creature before it emerges from the dark, not by sight, not by hearing, by density, by how the water feels. This is what the deep dizid teaches you: to listen without ears, to see without eyes, to think without speaking. The silence is not empty, it is full of information. You drift into another chamber, larger than the last, more open. The walls here are smooth, sculpted by ancient currents, not jagged like before. And at the center of the chamber, something remarkable, a ghost at least. That's what it looks like, translucent, pale, suspended motionless in the water. Like a jellyfish, but larger, slower, stranger. It is a deep-sea ctenophore comb jelly. Its body is almost invisible. Its cilia flash faintly, catching what little light filters through from the ROV that passed hours ago, or perhaps longer. Time here is difficult. The jelly does not move toward anything, it just waits. Its tentacles trail behind it like threads. Anything small enough that drifts into their grasp is gently pulled in, not hunted, just acquired. Efficiency again. No chase, no energy wasted. You drift beside it, and for a moment, the two of you occupy the same rhythm. It does not react. It does not flee, because here, in the territory of pressure, nothing wastes movement unless it must dot further down another pulse. Not from a creature, it's from the earth itself. A tremor, soft, distant, measured. Perhaps two tectonic plates somewhere, miles away, have nudged each other. Not a quake. Not enough to change anything, but enough to feel the walls vibrate faintly. Silt. stirs from the floor and dances upward like snow. The creatures around you pause, sensing the change. Then, everything settles, no panic, only response. You continue. The trench narrows again, curling inward like a spiral. It reminds you of a nautilus shell organic, endless dot, and here in the coiling folds of the seafloor, life hides in places smaller than eyes can follow. Isopods, the size of shoes, crawl slowly over broken rock, their legs clicking in near silence. They look like insects, but they are not. They are ancient, armored, heavy for their size. They feed on what sinks, scales, flesh, anything not claimed. One is gnawing at a fish carcass, now perhaps a lanternfish caught in the wrong current, or a deep-sea smelt that strayed too far. There is no violence in the act, just utility. Eat what's available, leave nothing behind. You move past them, deeper into the curl. The water grows colder, but not absolutely so. It hovers near freezing, just enough to slow everything, even thought, and then something unexpected. Forest, not of trees, but of tubes. Tall, narrow chimneys rise from the seafloor. It's several meters high. They shimmer faintly, not with light, but with heat. This is a black smoker, a hydrothermal vent system, and unlike the cold silence of the rest of the trench, this place is alive with fury. Superheated water, up to 400 degrees Celsius jets from the chimneys, mixing with the near-freezing seawater around it. It forms clouds of black minerals, rich in sulfides, iron, manganese, toxic to surface life, nourishing to the deep, and all around the base of these chimneys life. Thick mats of bacteria, feasting on the chemicals, forming the base of a food chain with no sunlight. Towering tube worms, red-plumed and rootless, anchored directly into the vent crust, absorb the energy not from light, but from sulfur. Gigantic vent crabs, their bodies pale and smooth, picked carefully among the rocks, feeding on microbial mats. Even blind shrimp cluster in the warm shadows, orienting themselves by temperature gradients. This is an oasis, a paradox, a place where the sea is most toxic and most alive, and the creatures here are not weak. They are not fragile. They are thriving. You hover beside a vent, close enough to feel the warmth radiating through the water. It is not a comfort. It is a reminder. Life will find a way in, even the most impossible places, not through conquest, but through adaptation. There are no leaves here, no photosynthesis, no green dot, and yet life flourishes because it does not wait for conditions to improve. It evolves to meet them. You drift back, the current tugging gently at your sides. The heat fades, the silence returns, but now it feels different, not empty, full. This part of the trench has no light, no sound, but it holds the memory of what you've just seen. The tubes, the heat, the red plumes of the worms swaying. You have seen what the surface cannot imagine. A world that lives not in spite of the pressure, but because of it. As you drift upward again, you feel the water thin slightly. The depth has not changed much, but the chemistry has less sulfur or more oxygen. Signs that you are approaching a different zone. Above, a faint glow, not daylight, not the RAV, but bioluminescence. Hundreds of tiny flashes, some green, some blue, a few deep red. A school of small fish, perhaps bristlemouths or viperfish, scatter ahead of you, their bodies blinking in perfect, chaotic rhythm. This is not light for seeing. It is light for surviving, for attracting mates, for warning predators, for luring prey. You pass into the cloud of lights. They do not sting. They do not resist. They simply swirl around you, each pulse a signal, a whisper, a decision. And once again, you are reminded, in the deep, survival is not about dominance. It is about symbiosis, with pressure, with silence, with darkness, with time. The trench continues. There are more chambers to pass, okay? More currents to follow, more wisdom to absorb. But for now, you pause, you float, suspended, a single presence in an endless sea of quiet intelligence, and a deep, watch us back, just back. You have paused, not in confusion, not in fear, but in a rare moment of stillness where time itself appears to step aside. The ocean has stopped speaking in currents and flashes. The trench is momentarily calm, and in that pause, something ancient stirs. It is not dramatic. It does not rush toward you. It simply exists ahead. Nestled between sedimentary folds on the seafloor are creatures that should no longer be here, fossils, but alive. They are living relic species, so old, so unchanged, they appear to have missed the last few 100 million years entirely. Forms are familiar, not because we see them often today, but because we see them etched into rock, preserved in stone, graved in the bones of the planet itself. The first you see is a coelacanth, massive, lobe-finned. Its fins undulate like slow wings, more like limbs than paddles. Its scales are thick and iridescent, a blue-gray shimmer that barely catches the scattered glows of bioluminescent specks. Once thought extinct for 65 million years, ticked, reappeared live in the 20th century. It moves as if unbothered by its own mythology. There is no awareness in its eyes, no poetry in its path. It simply moves because it must, and that's enough. Nearby, half buried in the sand, is another marvel, a horseshoe crab, or something remarkably like it. The body is domed, the tail spine stiff, its legs tucked neatly. Beneath, it could be asleep. It could be dead, but then one leg twitches, then another. It is not hurrying, it never does. This is a creature whose blood is blue, whose design predates dinosaurs, whose rhythm is tidal, even here at the bottom of a trench. These animals are not here by accident. They're here because the deep does not demand change. It only demands endurance. There are fewer threats, fewer mutations, fewer waves of competition, and in that stability, ancient forms survive, not by dominating, by lasting. You drift closer, and between the rocks, you see yet another relic, faulty, pale, twisting gently with the current. A sea lilia crinoid, not a flower, an animal related to starfish, but anchored like a plant. Its feathery arms wave without urgency, catching detritus as it floats by. It has no brain, no eyes, but it lives, it feeds, and it waits. This is the deep's greatest lesson. That time is not a river that sweeps all things away. Sometimes it is a tide that leaves the oldest stones untouched. The current picks up slightly, soft, slow, but consistent. You follow it, not because it calls to you, because you've learned to read it now. It leads you into a space more open than any before. Not a cave, not a tunnel, a cathedral of rock and silt. Vast pillars rise from the trench floor, carved by ages of current, hollowed out by chemical seepage. Framed by walls that stretch upward into total blackness, the pressure here feels reverent, not oppressive, not loud, just heavy with memory. The seafloor is scattered with small bones, fish, squid, crustaceans, perhaps even birds or mammals that sank unusually deep. None are fresh. All are arranged, not by hands, not deliberately, but over time, the currents have deposited remains in a quiet spiral, like a great fossilized shell-soft, delicate, incomplete life, leaving behind its own kind of writing. You move between the pillars. Each step or drift feels slower than the last dot, not from fatigue, from gravity of thought. You are not just seeing survival now. You are seeing evolution held in Sassy's creatures that should have disappeared, environments that should have collapsed, ecologies that persist because no one disturbed them, You spot another being now, not an ancient one. Visitor, a deep-sea octopus, small, pinkish. Its skin glows faintly blue. Its arms curl inward, not from fear, but from rest. It perches on a rock, half wrapped around a clutch of eggs, dozens of them, translucent, UNHATCH. This octopus will not eat. She will not leave. For months, perhaps years, she will remain exactly here, guarding her offspring until they emerge, or until she does not survive to see them. This is not an anomaly. It is known. Some deep-sea octopuses brood their eggs for over 4 years. No food, no movement, only devotion. You pause again, not because you're tired, but because the scene demands. Stillness. The eggs shimmer softly. The mother blinks, and the deep holds its breath. You drift backward, not to leave, but to allow the moment to remain. Whole, not disturbed, just witnessed. You return to the outer ring of the cathedral. And again, the current nudges you sideways. It has been subtle, but clear. The deeper you've gone, the less randomness there is. Up on the surface, the sea is chaos. Waves, heat, light, sound, storms, tear. It is a system. An old one, not mechanical. Organic, living. The trench continues, narrowing slightly, then opening again. And in the next chamber, you see something unexpected. Color. Not the faint, bioluminescent flashes or pale glow of jelly bodies. Real color. Red, orange, purple, deep blue. A field of deep-sea corals. They grow, slowly, perhaps an inch per year. Some of the colonies here are over 4,000 years old, and they are not reefs in the tropical sense. They are towers, trees of bone and sponge, twisting, porous, delicate structures that anchor to the rock and filter nutrients from the water. They are not bright, not loud, but they are alive, and among them life. Tiny fish, shrimp, brittle stars, crabs, all moving slowly, carefully, respectfully. This is one of the most fragile ecosystems in the deep. A single damaged branch may take centuries to regrow, and yet it is still here, because the deep guards what matters. It does not reward speed or strength, it rewards persistence. The current lifts slightly. Your ascent is beginning, but the trench is not finished. There are more zones ahead, more science, more silence. But in this place, in this still, old garden of fossils that breathe you, understand something that most surface creatures never will. To survive in the deep is not to conquer, it is to endure. And in the soft whisper of rising currents, the coral bends, slightly welcoming you forward. As you rise slowly from the coral grove, the currents shift again, not in violence, not in speed, but in direction. It's as though the trench has exhaled. You are carried not upward, not downward, but sideways into a hollowed-out corridor along the canyon wall. The walls here are smoother than before. The floor is dark with ancient sediment. Life is scarcer in this corridor, but not absent. In the near distance, something stirs. A shadow, then another. They move slowly, so slowly that you mistake them for debris. But no, they are alive. The first thing you see clearly is a giant amphipod, one of the largest scavenging crustaceans in the deep. Its translucent exoskeleton gleams like faint glass in the filtered dark. Its legs, too many to count, in a glance move rhythmically, tapping the ground with eerie precision. It is feeding on a whalebone, just a piece. The flesh is long gone. Only calcium and fragments remain. But to the amphipod, this is gold. Even a single rib can feed dozens of deep-sea scavengers for years. And whale falls. They are rare to rare. You turn slightly. There, another presence. Not scavenging, hunting. A long, ribbing-like body glides above the sediment. Is nearly invisible, more absence than presence. Then it turns, an eye massive, reflective locks. Onto you, it is a snipe eel, or something close to it. Its body is longer than yours. Its jaw curves inward like an old key. It moves with elegance, okay? But also something darker. Intent, not aggression. Observation. It doesn't flee. It doesn't attack. It simply follows for a time, keeping distance. Always slightly behind, always slightly below. You drift faster, not from fear, from instinct. The trench is teaching. You will get not everything here is passive. The deeper you go, the more alien the rules become, and the most dangerous creatures. They do not glow, they do not flail, they wait. You move into a new chamber, now slightly wider, filled with tangled rock outcrops and mineral debris. The current is more erratic here. Columns of warm and cold water push against each other. You pause behind a rock to rest at, then movement from above. A massive shape. It falls slowly, gracefully, like silk. It doesn't swim. It descends. Giant siphonophore. Not one creature. Thousands. A colonial organism, each part genetically identical, but performing a different function. Some move, some sting, some feed. Together, they form a chain longer than a bus, maybe longer than a train. You can't see the end. It glows faintly along its length, a ribbon of blues and purples and ghostly whites. Not for defense, not for warning, for lure. Tiny creatures are already approaching, hypnotized. A small fish darts too close and, in less than a heartbeat, it disappears inside a web of tendrils. The siphonophore never stops drifting. It just absorbs. Efficient, eternal, almost gentle. You stay far from it. Even the current avoids its path. There are creatures in the deep that do not fight for food. They let the food come to them, and in this place, that strategy works. Everything falls eventually, including you. You continue down a narrow passage, and that's when you see something didn't expect. A light, not bioluminescent, not organic. It's steady, white blue, artificial. You hesitate, then approach. A small metal tube, barely the length of your arm, lies half buried in the sand. On the side, a faded logo, an old university, possibly dropped decades ago. A deep-sea sensor, long dead. The CASING is cracked. No signal, no sound, but its presence says everything. Someone else came here, not in person, but they tried to listen, to measure, to understand. You're not the first, but you may be the first to drift past it in silence, with no readings to send back. It's no mission to complete, only presence. The device doesn't stir, but its rusted joints creak faintly in the current, like an echo from another time, a reminder that the surface always tries to reach the deep but rarely stays. The trench has no need for wires, no use for screens. Its intelligence is geological, biological, fluid, and its memory is not digital. It is mineral. You rise again, gently, following a faint slope upward, and there another change. The water grows, thicker, not in temperature, not in pressure, in density. The salinity spikes slightly. Something is altering the chemistry here. You approach the source, a slick, not oil, not waste, a brine pool, an underwater lake. You hover above it, astonished. It's a real body of water inside water. Its surface ripples like gelatin, but it does not mix with the ocean around it. It has its own shore, its own gravity. Its salinity is several times that of seawater, and nothing that enters it comes out. Crabs, fish, even octopuses that drift into a brine pool die instantly. Their bodies fossilize within minutes, but some creatures live at the edges. They've evolved to withstand. What would kill anything else? Mussels grow in clusters, feeding on bacteria that survive the hypersaline soup. Tiny worms burrow into the saturated mud, their bodies laced with proteins resistant to chemical burn. Even the occasional eel-like predator circles the pool's rim, carefully avoiding contact, feeding on the weaker species that stray too close. This is not water, it is a barrier, a reminder that even in the deep, where almost everything blends, separation still exists. Not everything mixes. Some boundaries remain absolute. You drift away from the lake slowly, feeling the chemistry return to normal, and you realize something unsettling. You were fascinated by the brine, but not surprised, because by now you expect the impossible. You've accepted that the deep holds realms within realms. Some rooms are ancient, some are toxic, some are still breathing, some are built from flesh, others from salt, but all of them are part of the same quiet cathedral of pressure and patience. You continue, and now things shifts again. Not the current, not the pressure, not the sound. You hear something, not loud, not sharp, a faint clicking, like two stones tapped together. It repeats, then stops, then repeats. You freeze and listen. It's not mechanical, it's not artificial, it's natural, but deliberate. Another click, then two, then silence again. You've entered the hunting zone of a deep diving predator, possibly a beaked whale, possibly something older, stranger. They dive to these depths to feed on squid, on fish, on anything they can find. They use echolocation, not loud sonar pulses, but narrow band clicks that don't carry far. Stealth sonar, not to navigate, to stalk. You drift behind a rock shelf and stay still. Minutes pass, the clicks fade. You are not what it was hunting, but it was close, too close. You resume your path, shaken but wiser. In the deep, even silence must be questioned. Some predators do not roar. They whisper, whisper. The silence lingers. Not the silence of emptiness, but the silence of expectations, like the breath held just before thunder, or the stillness in a room before someone speaks. You've left behind the brine pool, the predator's echo, the fossil things that continue to breathe, and you are moving again, though you feel changed. Every motion now feels slower, more deliberate. The trench has softened you. Time doesn't pass down, here it accumulates, like sediment. And now, something else is changing. The water grows, warmer. You notice it slowly. The cold that had wrapped itself around your limbs like cloth begins to loosen. The chill that hummed through your bones fades. There is no sun, no magma, yet the warmth is real. It radiates upward from beneath the floor. You have reached one of the ocean's most alien and misunderstood phenomena, hydrothermal vents. They are not rare, but they are rarely seen. You begin to descend slightly again toward a blackened crack in the trench floor. Faint, shimmering distortions dance above it as if the water is warping, and then you see it. The vent, a chimney, crusted with minerals, perhaps 3 stories high, rising from the seabed like a ruined tower. At its peak, a steady plume of superheated water gushes into the cold ocean around it. This isn't steam. It doesn't boil into bubbles. Down here, water can remain liquid even at 400 degrees Celsius because of the crushing pressure. It hisses out into the sea like smoke in slow motion, but it is not empty. All around the vent, clinging to its base, nestled in cracks, swaying gently in this superheated flow life. Unexpected, unimaginable, thriving tube worms, nearly as tall as you, with white bodies and bright red plumes, clustered in dense forests. They have no mouths, no stomachs, no digestive systems. They survive through a symbiosis with chemosynthetic bacteria inside their bodies. Organisms that turn the vent's toxic hydrogen sulfide into nourishment. No sunlight, no photosynthesis, just chemistry. Nearby, you see vent crabs, pale, blind, scuttling over the rocks. Their legs are stubby, their shells thick. They cluster where the water is hottest, feeding on bacterial mats or smaller prey. Tiny vent shrimp swarm in clouds. Their backs glow faintly, not with bioluminescence, but with reflected heat. These animals are not rare in the vent zone, but they are unique to it. Remove them, and they die. Relocate them, and they cannot adapt. They are specialists, not in hunting, not in hiding, but in existing under conditions no surface life could tolerate. You pause and observe. The heat is not unbearable here, only perceptible. It's like standing beside a slow furnace whose breath never ends. The rocks near the vent glisten with metallic sheen iron, manganese, copper, gold. These vents are fountains of minerals, the places where the earth bleeds into the ocean, and their location, entirely temporary. Each vent lives for perhaps a few decades, maybe centuries. Then, the tectonic forces below shift. A pipe collapses. The magma retreats, and the vent dies. But when it does, another may be born miles away. These are not just biological zones. They are time zones, new continents forming in secret. You drift farther along the vent field, and the number of chimneys increases. Some are thin and white, others black and jagged. Some emit tiny spurts, others huge clouds. This is a city, not of buildings, not of culture, but of emergence, where no energy should exist. There is plenty, and yet it is not eternal. A vent can go cold. In weeks, the creatures here must either move or die. And so, despite the abundance, every being here lives with the quiet knowledge of impairment. You continue your path, passing close to a newly formed ventite's mineral walls, still glistening with color. The water near it pulses with heat. But what you see next is even stranger. A thin crack in the rock, glowing faintly blue, not light, not fire, not chemiluminescence, minerals reacting, life beginning. This may be how it all started. You think, perhaps billions of years ago, a crack like this split open on the early earth. Warmth met water, chemistry met chance, and life a cell, a code, a loop formed in the deep, not in light. In darkness, you press your hand against the rock. It's warm. This far down, you found heat that remembers. You move away slowly, and the vents begin to fade behind you. The terrain changes again, less jagged, more brittle. You've entered a new region, cold seeps. They are quieter than vents, less dramatic, but no less vital. Instead of heat, they release methane, sulfide, oil, and other hydrocarbons into the water. The seeps are slow, often visible, but around them, strange life gathers. You see mussels, again but larger. Some of them are decades old. They feed on bacteria that digest methane inside them, long, pale worms embedded in the mud. You know these from studies. They are Lamellibrgia type of tube worm that may live for 250 years or more. They extract nutrients from the seeped chemicals and grow a millimeter at a time. Time here is not a clock, it is texture. Growth is not measured in days, but in generations. You drift gently across the field. No sudden movement. Every life here is fragile, not weak fragile, in that it cannot be replaced. You think about how rare this is, how deep sea mining could obliterate it, how noise from above can rupture it, and how little of it has ever been filmed, measured, understood. You are now a witness to something that is both ancient and endangered. You passed a fish. It looks like a cod but smaller, softer, with larger eyes. It had a cousin, adapted for low-light life. It swims lazily, not bothered by your presence. You pass another vent like crackbutt instead of heat or chemicals. It leaks brine, like the pools you saw earlier. This one is fresher. Tia, the salt glitters in the dim water. Then silence returns, and you move on. Another ascent, this time gradual, rising from the field of seeps into an open chamber. Here, It's colder again. Cleaner. The water moves more freely. The pressure remains constant. The tone has changed. You're entering a zone known to researchers as the abyssal plain. It's a flat expanse of deep ocean floor that stretches 400, sometimes thousands of miles. No mountains, no cracks. It's just slow slopes, silt and time. It feels like crossing a desert, not of sand, of stillness. Tiny organisms live here, brittle stars, cucumbers, glass sponges, but they are few and far between. This place isn't hostile, it's quiet. The silence is a kind of hospitality, a permission to rest. You drift low, letting your body hover a few feet from the floor. The silt stirs gently with your passing. You see faint trails left by creatures you cannot see, tiny footprints in the dust of a forgotten world. You stay here longer than you meant to, not because of exhaustion, because it feels safe. The trench has taught you fear. It has taught you awe. But here in the center of the abyss teaches you something else. Acceptance. No one is watching. No light will find this place. No headlines will mention it. But still, it exists. Still, it lives. And in that, you feel something deep in your own body shift. A kind of quiet respect. And then, a sound. A faint knock. No, not mechanical. A heartbeat. Your own. You'd forgotten it was there. It was there. You wait, still hovering low over the abyssal plain, letting the hush of the deep press softly against your thoughts. There are no creatures in sight now. No chimneys or seeps. No glowing eyes or drifting tendrils. Only the vast floor, dappled with the silt like powdered stone. Yet nothing here is still. Every grain of sediment is the story of something that once lived. Something that floated. Something that died. The deep sea is not an empty place. It is a gathering that everything that ever lived above eventually comes here. You notice it first as a change in the grain of the seafloor, a pattern, a spiral, then another. They look accidental-like, the trails of a drifting leaf, but as you follow them, they grow more elaborate. You've entered a territory, a section of the plain marked by the careful, mathematical nests of a deep-sea creature. In the distance, the faint outline of a circular structure comes into view. At first, it looks geological, but as you approach, symmetry becomes unmistakable. A near-perfect spiral of ridges, quaking outward from a central hollow 7 feet across. You've found the work of a pufferfish, or a cousin of it, one of the few deep-sea artists known to science. This isn't a home. It's not even a nest in the traditional sense. It's a signal, a display, carved over days, sometimes weeks, with fins and patience to attract a mate who may never come. There's no pufferfish now. Up, the display is old, a little silted, but it remains, a monument to a desire that crossed time and pressure and silence. You hover above it, reverent. The deeper you go, the more you realize survival is not the only story here. Even in the darkest waters, there is beauty for beauty's sake. Not all effort leads to survival. Some leads to art. You continue, and the plane changes again. You spot them next not by their movement, but by their absence. Large, featureless patches of seafloor where no sediment lies, scoured clean. Not recently, not violently, but intentionally, as if something cleared it, or something landed here. You think of whale falls again, of the silent thud of a body descending for hours, finally resting at the bottom with no sound at all. You approach one of the empty zones, and there embedded in the floor a faint depression, rib-shaped, faint discoloration of the minerals. It's a grave dot, not fresh, decades old, maybe more. The bones are gone, dissolved or eaten, but the shape remains. This was once a whale, a giant drifting being whose death fed thousands, and now its memory feeds you. You pause. The ocean offers no obituary, but this quiet basin tells you all you need to know. The trench remembers. Everything falls. Eventually, everything leaves a trace. You continue to drift over this underwater cemetery here and there. You notice other small signs, faint outlines, disruptions in the silt, changes in the mineral dust. All of them speak to past events, a collapsed carcass, a scavenger's frenzy, a long sleep. The trench is a keeper of secrets, but not because it refuses to share. It speaks constantly, but only in the language of erosion. You begin to hear it now, the quiet grammar of silt, the punctuation of stones, the sentences that rise when two currents meet. There is communication in the way the sand gathers, and as you move again, another shadow appears, not on the ground, but above. Large, wide, still. You look up, and it's not a creature. It's a cloud of particles, not silt, not plankton, something else. It moves slowly across the current, not falling, not rising, hovering. A marine snowbank, the largest you've seen yet. Every deep sea receives what's called marine snow, a constant trickle of organic debris from the surface. Dead plankton, fecal matter, microscopic exoskeletons, pollen, skin cells. Anything that dies above eventually drifts down. But here, it's not a trickle. It's a storm. The cloud is thick, almost milky in places, and you can feel its drag as you enter it. The world dims. Your vision shortens. This is what eternity looks like in motion. Nothing dies in the deep. It just becomes nutrient. Some of the particles here are thousands of years old. Others were plankton 2 weeks ago. Others may have once been part of a jellyfish, a fish, a person. You are swimming through the afterlife of millions. You drift deeper into it, okay? For a moment, you lose all direction, up and down, vanish. There is only float. This is how the trench survives. Not through growth, through collection. Every second, Keat is fed. It is never hungry. You pass through the snowbank slowly, deliberately. No need to rush. There is nothing predatory here. It's only transformation. And when you finally emerge from the storm, the plain beneath you looks different, flatter, more orderly, and at its center far, off you see a rise, not a mountain, not a hill, a mound. It gleams slightly in the distance. You approach slowly, and then you realize shells, thousands, tens of thousands, scattered, layered, piled, the bones of mollusks, urchins, clams stacked over centuries by the slow, unhurried sorting of the deep. This is a midden, a natural archive. Each shell tells a story. What it ate, how it grew, what currents passed it. The trench doesn't bury history, it catalogs it, and you've found the library. You hover above the pile, and for a moment, you feel a strange kind of presence. Not a spirit, not a being, a weight, as if the ocean is showing you something sacred. It has no voice, but it does have memory, and it keeps that memory in shapes, not books, not videos, not recordings, but in the curves of shells, the fold of coral, the deep wrinkle in the silt where a worm once lived. Nothing is wasted. Everything that falls contributes. Even stillness has value. Even decay has meaning. You rise against, slightly in now. The temperature begins to shift once more, not in a sharp gradient, but in waves. You've entered a thermocline again. But this one is moving. It pulses, and with it, a sound, low, rhythmic, not artificial, not musical. A drum, now closer to a heartbeat, or a signal. The deep has many languages, and this one feels ancient. You follow it, not forward, downward, again. The signal continues steady, low, and almost tactile. It pulses through the water like something alive, not mechanical, not animal, something deeper, older. You descend toward it, not quickly, just enough to let the pressure remind you where you are. The landscape begins to change again. The shell mounds fade behind you. and the seabed darkens less from the lack of light, and more from the density of the terrain. Here, the floor is not flat. It ripples, not in smooth dunes or rocky ridges, but in long, drawn-out folds. You're not sure if this is sediment or something beneath the sediment pushing up through it, and still, it's the sound. Not louder, but closer. You scan your surroundings, slowly turning to avoid the sediment cloud you leave behind. Everything here reacts to motion. Every breath moves something. Then, you see it, or rather, you stop seeing. A section of the floor ahead is not reflecting light, not diffusing color, not behaving like sand or stone. It's absorbing. A flat, circular area, perhaps 30 feet across, where the seafloor appears to drink the light around it. You drift toward it. The sound aligns, and the water gets warmer. It's a subduction vent. Not the dramatic chimneys of earlier hydrothermal activity, but a shallow fracture where Earth's crust is being swallowed back into the planet. Here, the floor itself is cracked, and through that crack, Earth breathes out heat and gases quietly, rhythmically. The pulse is not sound in the way we understand it. It's a pressure wave, a heartbeat of the mantle. You hover at the edge of the vent and feel it not just in your ears or chest, but in your teeth. A kind of buzz, a subsonic hum that seems to enter your bones and remain there long after each pulse fades. And as you look into the crack, you see motion, tiny eddies, not water, not entirely gas, mostly carbon dioxide, perhaps a little methane, and deep down traces of something hotter. You cannot go further. Even the machine would buckle here. You pause, and in this pause, the trench reveals another truth. The ocean is not just filled with water. It is layered with histories. Here, in the subduction zone, the sediment changes again. Blacker, finer, more metallic. It's made from old volcanoes, crushed under time, created from cosmic dust, accumulated by gravity, from microplastics, barely distinguishable from the minerals they now mimic. The trench does not reject what arrives, it sorbs. You begin to drift laterally, now following the edge of the fracture. The ground beneath you becomes broken, not jagged, not sharp, but tired. The crust here is old, heavier than any rock on land. It has not seen the sun in over 100 million years. You are floating above a place older than any mountain, older than most continents, and yet it is still changing. Beneath this point, the Earth's plates slide past each other in silence. One moves west, one moves east, a few inches per year. But even at that speed, this movement shapes everything above continents. Weather, oceans. It's humbling. You reach a quieter region again. The pulse is behind you now, but you still feel it in your chest. Ahead, the ground rises, not sharply, just enough to suggest a shift in the trench's mood. You're entering what scientists call a mud volcano. Field. Here, ancient, pressurized gases force soft, mineral-rich mud upward through small vents, forming cone-shaped mounds on the ocean floor. Some are active, oozing constantly. Others are dormant, frozen into brittle, mushroom-like formations. You approach one. It's wide, almost flat-topped, as if someone tried to build a tower, but gave up. Halfway. Small fissures around its edge. Burble with gas, you see bubbles form and pop without rising. The pressure is too strong. They collapse in on themselves. Everything here struggles to escape, and yet nothing panics. It is not a violent place. It's pressurized. Even the volcanoes seem patient. You move beyond them, and the terrain becomes spongier. The ocean floor here is rich in soft clay and decaying organic matter. Life returns, but differently. Long, gelatinous creatures, semi-transparent, drift just above the sediment. Some look like ribbons, others like parachutes. They move with almost no energy. Not predators, not prey, just participants. You see a sea pica, kind of deep-sea holothurian, trudging slowly across the floor. Its stubby legs push into the soft clay. It leaves a faint trail behind, like a hiker crossing wet snow. This creature has no eyes, no need. It tastes the ground as it walks, sipped in bacteria. It's digesting detritus, recycling death into motion. It lives slowly, but it lives. You keep moving. A small current rushes past, a reminder that even in the stillest water, there is motion. Particles follow it, trailing like smoke. And then, ahead of you, barely visible, shadow moves against the current. It's large, but not sharp. A jellyfish, not one you know. It's not from any catalog. Its bell is almost 6 feet wide. Its tendrils trail nearly 20. It pulses gently once every few seconds. Each motion seems unnecessary, yet each one is exact. It has no brain, no eyes, but it turns toward you slowly, deliberately, and then glides away. You follow for a moment, not out of curiosity, out of respect. Creatures like this have survived for 600 million years. Their ancestors saw the first fish, the first land, the first trees. This one will never surface. It will never be seen by light, but it is no less real. You let it go behind you. The floor begins to rise again imperceptibly. At first, you've been traveling for hours, okay? Now, or days. Time means little, here and ahead. A formation emerges, unlike anything before. A vertical wall. It rises straight up hundreds of feet to the black. A cliff. Not a geological accident, a tectonic scar. This is the edge of a collapsed rift where part of the seafloor sheared away eons ago, leaving behind a stone face that has never been touched by sunlight. You rise along it, slowly, carefully. The stone is dark basalt, pocked with holes, slick with bacteria. Small creatures cling to its surface, some in cracks, some embedded directly in the stone. You see a polychaete worm, its bristles glittering faintly as you pass. You see amphipods tucked in shadow. Even here on a sheer wall in darkness, life adapts. You reach the top, and for a moment, you pause. The trench is behind you now. Below, the pressure still sings. But here, the top of the wall, the water feels lighter. You've not escaped the deep, but you've reached a kind of threshold. Ahead, another plane begins. But you know this one is different, because far, far in the distance, the current changes, and with it the temperature. You've begun to rise, but not toward escape, toward something stranger, toward the midnight zone. And what waits there is watching, it's watching. The wall fades behind you, sinking into memory. Ahead, the plane stretches once more, but this one is different. The water carries a subtle clarity now, not because it's cleaner, but because your eyes after so long in darkness have learned to see without light. And in this clarity, you begin to notice things, not creatures, not movement, but attention. Something is watching, not with eyes, not with a mind like yours, but with presence. You continue forward. No choice. Its journey doesn't allow for stillness, not anymore. And, slowly, the seafloor begins to rise again. This is no accident. You're entering the midnight zone, transition layer, where the deepest dark begins to lift. Not into light, but into change. The pressure is still immense. The cold, still absolute. But the biology subtly shifts, tear. Creatures are not designed only for endurance, okay? They begin to communicate, not with sounds, not with movement, but with light. You see the first flash on your left. A small pulse blue, then green, then gone. You pause. A second pulse blinks just ahead. Not random, it responds to the first. A conversation. You drift forward into a bioluminescent corridor where light is not reflected, but created. Chemical reactions from ancient codes, from bacteria that glow not for themselves, because a creature hosts them. Some flashes warn, I am toxic. Some lure, come closer. Some say nothing. They just exist, like stars in a galaxy where no sun ever rises. You float in this constellation, a ghost among ghosts. And then you see the watchers. They don't hide, they don't move. They float, slowly spinning in place, their bodies translucent, their organs glowing dimly from within. CTENOPHORES.com jellies. They are not true jellyfish, but their lineage is older. They beat rows of tiny, hair-like cilia combs along their sides to move, and as they do, the refracted light splits in two. Rainbows. You count 3, then 6, then you stop counting. They are everywhere, drifting, turning, not feeding, not hunting, not observing, and their glow so soft, so slow feels less like communication and more like presence, like they are reading something in you. You drift among them, careful not to touch, not out of fear, out of respect. They live in silence. That makes even the trench feel loud. And then the pattern breaks. A flash to your right, not blue, but red dot, rare dot. You turn, and for the first time in hours, you hear something, not in your ears, in your mind. A thump, then silence, then another. It isn't sound, it's motion. Water displaced deliberately. You drift toward it. Heart slower than before, mind still, and then it arrives. From the shadows emerges a shape you cannot fully comprehend. It glides with no visible means of movement, long, thin, in parts, like a ribbon pulled through water. Its head is small, its body impossibly long, a siphon off for one of the longest animals on Earth. But it isn't an animal. It's not in the way you know. It's a colony, dozens, sometimes hundreds of specialized units, each performing a task: movement, feeding, reproduction, all fused into a single being. It passes above you. It's casting a faint red glow that shifts across its length. It's like blood flowing through veins. You are nothing to it, a shadow inside its ocean. And then it fades again. You realize this is no place of dominance. There are no apex predators here, only survival through balance. Everything that lives here must give something away: light, heat, motion, self, you. Continue, and something else begins to form in the distance. Not an animal, not a rock, a shape, a structure. At first, it looks artificial, like cables or wires. But as you draw closer, you realize it's life. A coral forest. Yes, corals grow in the deep. Not the colorful reefs of the tropics, but slow, cold, stone-like beings that build upward from darkness. These are black corals. Their branches winding and brittle. They grow an inch every 100 years. Some are thousands of years old. You drift among them like a visitor in an ancient city. There is no sound here, only time. You notice creatures tucked into the coral's branches rimmed with glass bodies. Brittle stars curled like punctuation marks. Small fish with skulls that glow faintly from within. Everything here has learned to live slowly, to conserve, to wait. You continue forward. You continue forward, and the force thins. Behind you, stillness. Ahead, a flicker. Not from a creature from above. It's almost imperceptible. A faint change in water clarity. A distant shimmer. You rise slightly, and the shimmer becomes motion. Particles larger than before. Some organic, some not. You've entered another layer, the upper midnight zone. This is where things begin to fall from above. Dead matter, fish scales, bits of algae that clung to life near the surface before succumbing to gravity. You reach out and catch a piece. It's soft, ancient, but it smells like light. You're now halfway between the trench, its floor, and the surface. Not close, but closer. And with each meter gained, the ocean remembers. You begin to see fish, again slow, broad, torpedo-shaped beings that never rushed out. One passes you with no concern. A rat tail, perhaps. Its eyes are massive, reflective, built for one photon at a time. You rise with it for a while, okay? And then it turns, spirals once, and it's gone, above. The shimmer becomes a haze. It's not dawn, but something like hope. You've been in the deep for longer than most machines can last, longer than any diver could survive. And yet, here, at this border between eternal night and perpetual twilight, you feel something shift, a return, not to land, not to air, but to contrast. Below, pure survival. Above, choice. And in between, here, you drift. The only witness. You check the gauge. You're nearing the end of the midnight zone. Soon, the twilight zone will begin, and with it, color. But here, in the final stretch of the deep's great silence, you pause. You let the watchers fall behind. You let the force vanish. You let the siphon of force red echo flicker out, and you breathe. Because after everything, the heat, the cold, the pressure, the ghosts, you made it. You have seen what very few ever do. Not monsters, not terror, but intelligence in darkness, purpose in the still. A world where the rules are different, but not cruel, only unforgiving. And as you prepare to rise, you do not leave the deep behind. You carry it with you. Its patience, its memory, its slow, endless beauty. Its beauty. There's no rush. You don't break the surface yet. It's not even close. But as the midnight zone fades behind you, the water begins to change. It's still darkest, but it's a different kind of dark. A dark that holds possibility. A dark where the light once was. You're entering the twilight zone known scientifically as the mesopelagic layer. It stretches from about 200 meters to 1,000 meters below the surface. And while sunlight doesn't reach here in colors, we can see its faintest blue whispers still travel this far. The water holds it, and so do the creatures. Because here, light becomes language. As you rise, your senses adapt again. Q, your as already tuned to black and green, now begin to register contrast. Shapes sharpen, edges glint. The particles that fall like snow from above scatter and shimmer before they settle. It's quiet here, but not silent. The twilight zone is alive with motion, but it's all careful, economical. Everything has learned to survive on almost nothing. You drift among lanternfish, teeny, silvery swimmers whose bellies glow in patterned pulses. These lights aren't random. They help them communicate. Light. Help them hide. Hide. Yes, in a world without shadows, light can be camouflage. Many of these fish emit light from their undersides that matches the dim glow from above to a predator lurking below. A. Disappear against the ceiling of the sea. Counter-illumination, an adaptation older than memory. A. Survival tactic honed over hundreds of millions of years. You rise through a loose column of these fish, thousands of them, each no longer than a finger, yet together forming one of the largest masses of biomass on Earth. At night, these fish rise to the surface to feed. At dawn, they return to the twilight. You are meeting them at the edge of this migration. One turns toward you briefly. Its large eyes catch the faint blue of your light. It flits away. They do not fear you, but they don't understand you either. You are still an intrusion. And then, something larger passes behind them. A viperfish. Long, thin, almost eel-like. Its teeth are so large, they don't fit inside its mouth. They curve outward, permanent, like an exposed trap. Its head is large, its eyes unblinking. Its lure, tiny filament tipped with light, hangs in front of its mouth, like a question. It does not chase. It waits. Most days, most years, it catches nothing. But that's all right. In the twilight zone, patience is power. You rise further. The water becomes blue again. Not the deep blue of distant oceans. Muted, smoky blue like light, remembered, not seen, and here. The thermocline begins to fade. That sharp drop in temperature that marked the deep is softening. You feel warmth return to your suit. You check your pressure readings, still immense, still dangerous, but familiar now. And then something you haven't seen in a long time, color. Just a hint, a jellyfish rises beside you, pulsing upward in lazy spirals. Spell glows, not just white, but faint violet. Its fringe moves like silk in windless air. You watch its tendrils, impossibly thin, curl and uncurl with the grace of a thought. This jellyfish has no brain, no blood, no bones, and yet it is alive. So alive it passes within inches of you. You could touch it, but you don't, because to touch anything here is to disturb it. You look upward now. The water above no longer looks black. It looks heavy, blue layered over black, like smoke on ink, and then motion, fast, blurred, a school. Something fast and silver darts past you. A barracuda, perhaps, something like it. In the twilight zone, fish begin to hunt again, not with patience, with speed. They can see, and they can be seen. The rules are shifting. You follow their path. Slowly, no need to rush. You've been in the deep for a long time. You've moved through zones that defy our understanding of life. You've seen organisms that survive without sunlight, without food, without warmth. Now you are returning. But the return is not an ascent, it's a translation. Each meter upward, you shed a layer of silence. Each foot closer to the surface, you gather new light, new pressure, new memory, and suddenly you feel something strange. Drag. The water is not pulling anymore, it's pushing. The surface layer is different, warmer, less dense, full of life in ways the deep never was. You enter the epipelagic zone. The surface ocean, light, floods the space around you. You blink instinctively, even though your eyes are protected. After hours, maybe days, in the black, the sun feels alien. Particles glitter around you. Plankton drift like dust in a cathedral. Tiny crustaceans flick and twist through rays of light that feel impossibly bright. Above, the surface is not flat. It dances, it bends and flexes with each wave. You are close now, and yet you hesitate, because beneath the surface, you belonged. Here, you are visible, exposed. You take a breath, not of air, of water, of motion. You look back one last time, downward, into layers of memory, into silence, into pressure, and you see the world you left behind. You do not fear it, you do not long for it, but you know, now, it is always there, beneath the tides, beneath the storms, beneath the maps. A world of watchers, of signals, of waiting. And as your head breaks the surface, just for a moment, to understand why most of the ocean remains unseen, it is not because it is unreachable. It is because it asks a kind of stillness most of us will never know. And in that stillness keeps the world *** good night.